Hello everyone, Linda Israel here, and I decided for this live premiere we would do some gel printing. It's been maybe a month, maybe longer since I've done some gel printing. Hey, and if you're here in the chat, do speak up and say hi. I will be in the chat, so I'll be able to chat with you. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Hey, if you would, give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends so that they can join us as well. Let's see, I go live on Mondays. So gel printing. Gel printing is a form of mono printing. The idea is that you create a palette of colors and then you print it, and it's usually a one-time print. Sometimes there's enough paint that you may get ghost images or multiple images out of it. But it's kind of a different art form or medium where I think it's just all about playing, really, and taking your time just a little bit, being a little bit patient with the medium and having some fun. I have a 12 by 12 gel plate here in front of me. You can use any size that you want. I want to have a finished product of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I've got a 8.5 by 11 stencil on my gel plate right now, and I don't know if you can see the pattern in it, but it is from the January Artistic Stencil Club. I hand drew this design, and what I'm going to do is I've got strips of paper. This was just some, what is that, scrapbook paper that I had that was kind of ugly, and actually I'm kind of liking how it's starting to look with all the layers of paint because I've been using this for a little while. I'm going to line around my stencil with these little pieces of paper. Why? When I go to print my final print, I want to be able to know where my paint is for my pattern, and by doing this it kind of gives me this little framed area to work within. You'll see in just a moment. And it may be about time to replace it because it's starting to curl on me. All right, so I've got my stencil down. I'm going to use a mix of paints today. You may see me use some of the Master's Touch heavy body artist grade acrylic paint, and then occasionally I may also pick up some Anita's all-purpose acrylic craft paint. They do react differently. There's no wrong way to use the paints. Heck, you can use Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist if you want to. You can use re-inkers of various brands on here. You can use your ink pads directly on here. So there's really not that many mediums that you can't use on here. I would recommend that you read more information on the Gel Press website about what you can and can't do. All right, so I'm going to start with this black acrylic paint, and I'm going to put down a layer of it. And you want to put enough paint that it covers, but at the same time it's not too much. I do have a scrap of book page over here to the side that I will use to clean off my brayer in between. So now I'm using a soft Now I am using a soft rubber brayer, and I will go across this several times to get that paint down into the stencil design. It'll also thin the paint out a little bit because I don't want it super thick because it will take longer for it to dry. Now, some people, if you have the room, when they are done brayering, will take their stencil and lift it and then push it to a piece of paper. I don't have the room, and I've also found that the kind of paper that I'm using, it sticks to. So over here to my side, I have a little tub that I have put some water in with a little bit of Thieves Cleaner by Young Living just to help clean my stencil. Now I'm going to let this sit for a moment, and it's going to dry, and then I'll put my next layer of paint on. Here's where your patience comes into play. The paint's just about dry, and the time for it to dry varies. It kind of depends upon what the humidity is like where you live, what kind of paint that you are using. So here again is where you need to have a little bit of patience and just have that willingness to play. If I go to put the next layer of paint down too soon, the black paint will basically move and will spread into whatever color I put down next, and then you'll just kind of have this grayish mud that will pop up. So that's the reason why you want to wait just a little bit. Generally, I can come in here and I can take my finger and touch it, and if it doesn't come right up, which I don't see any paint coming up right now on my fingers, I'm ready for the next layer of paint. So I'm going to grab some Anita's All-Purpose. This is Royal Fuchsia. And I'm going to put just a little bit. You always want to open your paint away from your gel plate so you don't end up with crusty bits falling off the top. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this pink or magenta, fuchsia, royal fuchsia, not magenta. And I've got a little bit of island blue. It's kind of a turquoise color. I'm going to grab my brayer and pick up a little bit of that pink and just kind of dot it in different areas around that plate. And then I'll pick up the blue and do the same thing, just kind of adding a little bit here and there. And then now I'm just going to start brayering the whole thing, blending it together. So wherever those high concentrations of color, those will kind of be like little bright pops of color here and there. And in between we'll have this purple, we'll see the teal, we'll see the blue or the green, we'll see the, I can't talk, we'll see the pink and the teal. All right, so now that I've got that brayered, I'm going to remove my little masks that I put on here that framed out where the center part is. And I'm going to grab some copy paper. And I'm just using 20-pound, really cheap copy paper. Sometimes it will tear on me. Sometimes it works perfectly. It's hit or miss. Sometimes I'll lay another piece of paper on top and then use my brayer to gently brayer over it to really get that paper to adhere to the paint. I'm just rubbing over it to make sure that there's no bubbles, that it's really going to pick up that paint underneath. So then I will go to one of the corners and just gently start lifting it up. And I just kind of take my time, because if you go too fast, you can rip your paper. And then my black paint was still a little bit wet, wetter than I would have liked, but sometimes it just makes an interesting print. So here's what I ended up with. It's got a lot darker colors in it. It's not as bright pink as I wanted, but I'm also using the craft paint. So it has a little bit of a dull hue to it. Let me show you one I made earlier. So this was using the same technique. This is what I love about gel printing. It's so different depending on what you use. And I use the heavy body acrylic paint for this one. I did apparently wait long enough for the black to dry, and it gives a completely different look. Isn't that cool how that happens? All right, so I'm going to put my frame back around. There's still some paint on here. I'm not going to clean off my paint in between. We call these crusty bits, and as they build up, it makes for some interesting patterns that you'll see every once in a while in your gel prints. This is my new stencil that I just created. I think I called it Baroque stencil. I may need to adjust it just a little bit here. Now there's a little bit of black that's over here. So I'm trying to contemplate, okay, what color do I want to do next? When you're doing gel prints, whatever color you put down first is going to be the color that you see the most on the front of your print. So you're building layers front to back. Basically, you do it backwards. You put down what you want to see first, and then you keep going behind it, and then you'll get your gel print. So I know I have black on here. I think this time I'm going to grab, I've got this kind of a rouge, kind of a dark purple, and I'm not going to cover the whole gel plate. I'm just going to do a little bit with this color, and I'm going to grab a little bit of this light magenta. Whoop, I got more than I wanted. I'm going to take off my stencil and then let this dry. Then I'll come back, and I think I may add a teal color. This layer is ready. I think what I want to do is come in with this island blue, and maybe, you know, I saw a green. I think a green would be good as well. I've got citrus here. I've got a little bit of a, what I call a paint booger, for lack of technical term. It's basically where the paint just kind of balls up. So I'm just going to use my paper towel here, see if I can't get rid of it, as I end up with paint all over me. Just and remove the side pieces. There's my print. So you can see the pink, a little bit of the black coming through, and the shades of teal that are on there. I still have some left on my plate, so I'll go ahead and put back my masks, and let's apply another layer of paint. I'm not even going to bother stenciling anything else in. I'm just going to come back in with some more of the same paint that I had just a moment ago. I'm going to use a little bit more paint this time because apparently I didn't use quite enough to go all the way down and saturate all the layers of paint. We're getting there, but I still have more paint on the palette. So I think this time, I'm trying to decide what color I want to do next. Or if I want to do the same color schemes or mix it up a little bit. I've got a hyacinth color. It's kind of a pale purple. I'm getting some beautiful backgrounds, that's for sure. Look at the texture in that. Even though you don't see the pink pieces, you're getting some cool texture. I've got my alphabet stencil that I just recently added to my shop. So I'm going to lay that down. And let's come back in with a little bit of a black. I think that's what I want to do. Just a little bit of black. So I'm just going to put a little dollop, a couple of spots, and then spread this around. I'm okay if it's not completely filled in, just kind of gives a little bit of a pattern. So it'll have that distressed look. What I'm going to do is I'll probably just fast forward through this. I may come back in and do a voiceover. So I'm going to play for just a little bit and y'all can watch and see. Of course, if you have any questions during this session, do speak up in the chat and I'll do my best to answer those questions. My hair changed. Yes, I did go into a second day, and I thought I would recap what I gel printed. So this was using the January Artistic Stencil Club for 2021. This one is using my new Baroque stencil over what was left on the plate. This is just another mopping up that Baroque stencil. And then this was another mopping up, trying to get the last bits off. This is my alphabet stencil with some teal and purple. This is the half sheet for January 2021 Artistic Stencil Club. And this is from the December Artistic Stencil Club for 2020. This is using a, I think it's called Diamond with Flair. I think that's right. Or is it? It's diamond something. And then here's another in the pink. It's just real faded in the background. And this is a Quilted Starburst. It's one of my favorite stencils. I use a lot. And this is also from the January 2021 Artistic Stencil Club. And then here's a few others that I made just playing around before I videoed. And when I finished videoing, I just kept playing. So I just wanted to show you there's all kinds of ways to make gel print pages. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make something with a page. So I just want to look at this. For some reason, this one kind of calls to me a little bit. And I may want this one because it kind of is a companion to it. Let's see what else. Maybe this one. Maybe this teal one. I'm just picking out ones that just kind of appeal to me. And then I'm going to set these aside out of the way. So I'm just kind of looking at these, trying to see what kind of calls to me of what should I make with these. I grabbed some cardstock, and I think what I'm going to do is cut this cardstock. It may be hard to see that, but I made this little diagram to kind of give me an idea of how to cut up an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and what I would end up with. So you get a 3.5 by 3.5, 3.5 by 2.5, 3.5 by 2.5, 4.25 by 2.5 twice, 1.5 by 5 inches, and a 5 by 7. So I'm going to cut this up using this as my guide, and then these elements will be what we create. All right, so now I've got all these pieces of cardstock out here, and I don't know, I'm still stuck on this one. And I think what I want to do is, even though I tried to mask it off, sometimes you don't get it laid down perfectly. I'm going to trim this white area off of this, and then I'm going to use it to make some strips, I think. I think what I'm going to do is basically make some 1-inch strips, a couple of them anyway. And maybe about a 2-inch strip. I've kind of laid these out the way I think I want to put them together. What I need to do next is apply distress inks to the edges. So I have Walnut Stain Distress ink, and I'll just go ahead and go around all the edges on all the pieces. I dug around and picked out a few things. I usually cut up things. I fussy cut images from Calico Collage. I'll do some rubber stamped images, and then I put them in little baggies so that I can sort through them later. And I've kind of decided what I want to put on these elements right now. So now what I want to do is start collaging and putting these together. I've also got some fibers over here. Oh, I even have a little bit of fabric. I don't know what I'm going to use per se yet, because it's just all going to come together. So I'm going to start with this big journal card, and I think what I want to do is I want to stamp. So do I want to stamp this one? I think I want to stamp this one. So I want to stamp going down this edge here. So to help me with that, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to move it over just slightly and mark this very lightly all the way down. I'm using that as a guide so that when I stamp from this way over, So I'll stamp with the image going that way, and then that will fill that in. So let's do it. I'm going to use Jet Black Archival ink. And I got off a little bit on that, but I'm okay with it. So I think I want to glue this piece down, and then this is going to go over the top of it, so it'll hide my boo-boo down here at the bottom. So I'll go ahead and glue this piece down. I am going to go the sewing machine though. I think I want to stitch around this rectangle, so let's go over to the sewing machine. All right, so I'm over at my sewing machine, and I have regular thread, regular needle in it. I'm going to do a zigzag stitch. Mine is an electronic machine. It's about a 5-year-old machine, and I've got it set on 2 and 2 for the stitch width and length. And I'm just going to stitch around this rectangle. I think the card is pretty just like that. You don't have to do anything else to it, but I want to go ahead and use this sunflower by Calico Collage, and I'm going to glue that down right here at the bottom. And then I'll glue Be Yourself, another image from Calico Collage. I'll put it right there. I have this strip that I cut. It's a 1-inch by almost 11-inch strip. And I think what I want to do is make a coordinating belly band that will go over this. So when you put it in your journal, you have this to go by. So let me get a piece of paper that I want to use. So I have a book page. This is from the Layman's Bible Encyclopedia. And I think what I want to do is fold this. Yeah, I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to glue this together, and then I'll trim it to the size I need. So I'm looking at this and I'm trying to decide how I want to put it together. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I could put down some lace. The book page would just be something to help hold this into place. So if I were to put this piece of lace on here, and then let's say if I went back up the other direction on the other side, maybe even put this somewhat back to back on here. I want it to stick out just a little bit over the edge of the paper, and then this would go down the middle. And I'll just kind of give us a nice little bit of lace, I think. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking I'm going to make a 2-inch strip. And so that this will have the full height of the belly band, I'm going to take this piece and come in here about 3/4 of an inch and score it. I'll fold this over. Then I'm going to move this up to the 8.5-inch mark, and then I'll score this. And this now gives me a 2-inch by 2.5-inch piece. So when I glue it to my page, I'll put glue on these little tabs, and then that'll give me the full height of my belly band. So if I do have a large piece of paper, it will fit right in there. I'm going to go ahead and apply some Distress inks to the edges. All right, so if I look at this, I'll go ahead and cut strips of this lace to be the same height as the belly band, and I need 2 of them. I'm looking at the lace and I'm thinking, you know, when it is over my journal card, I think I want it to have a little bit more color in it. I'm going to get my Tattered Angels out and let's colorize this. All right, I've picked out some Tattered Angels that I want to use, so I'm going to lay my lace in my spray box here. This is a color that was from a subscription box, and I happen to have a few extra bottles, so I'm going to put those in my shop, and it's called Royal Peacock. You could also use Curious is really close to this color. So I'm going to go ahead and shake this up really well. You want to put that mica up in there, and I'm going to spray. So if I want to spray it, keep spraying it until it's the color that I want. If you want it to have a little bit of a vintage tinge to it, I've got craft here. It's a brown gold, I guess you could say. Maybe a little bit of a bronze, yeah. And I'll just put a little bit. I'll just kind of give it a little bit of a vintage grunge to it. I'll dry this with my heat tool. Now you want to be careful. I'm using, I think it's a synthetic lace, so you don't want to melt it. So I'm just going to use my heat tool to dry it. I think it's pretty much dry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the sewing machine. So I just want to put down enough glue to help hold it in place. So I'm just going to put down a little bit of glue in the middle. And then I'm going to take these pieces and kind of line them up, maybe even overlap them just a tad. I'm just using my acrylic block to help kind of smush that down so I don't get glue on my fingers. And then I think what I want to do is place this right on top. So I'm going to trim it to fit, and then we're going to go over to the sewing machine here in just a moment. Put a little bit of glue right under here. All right, so I'm going to go over to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch down both sides of this strip. So now you can see I sewed down both sides of that strip, and then this will glue onto my page, and that will go over my journal card. And we can choose to add more embellishments to it, but I kind of like the way it is, so I'm just going to move this aside, and let's move on to our other pieces. Here I found an image from Calico Collage that's a little bird, and it says a fragile handle with care. So I thought that might look kind of pretty, but I think it needs a little something else. So I've got a little book page here. What if I were to tear a strip? And I think I need to stamp in the background. So I've got from the Lace Duo, one of the lace pieces. And I think what I need to do is add some more distress ink to this book page. And I have a little scrap of lace here. So let's see. If I put this there, and maybe a snippet of this. I just have a little piece sticking out there. So I think what I want to do is glue these down. I'm going to add a little more distress ink on here. All right, so I'm going to glue this down up in the upper corner here. And then I've got this little word that says Bright Soul. So I'm wondering if it's too big. It may be too big. It doesn't quite fit. Let me dig around, see what else I can find. Okay, so I found the word dream. I've made these using my printer and my silhouette. I think that would look good right there on the bottom. All right, I'm going to go over to the sewing machine. I don't think you need to see it this time, but I'm just going to stitch around the postage stamp, and I think that'll finish this one off. So there it is, stitching around it. We'll have the stitches on the back. This could be a tuck spot. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Maybe this will be a tuck spot. So I'm going to set this aside. That's 3 elements done. So let's look at this one. Here I have a faux postage. This is the Iris postage stamp. I think it is called Iris. I think if you look Iris up, you'll find that. I don't think it needs a whole lot of other decoration on here. So I think I'm going to stamp back here. I'm going to use the same lace stamp from the Lace Duo. So it looks like I have put down a piece of lace right on top. And then we'll have this piece underneath. So I'm just going to glue these together. Now you could cut this into a tag shape if you wanted, but I kind of like that straight edge. All right, so there's another one. I thought this could be a tuck spot from the top, so we'll make this one really simple. I think I will glue this down, and then I'll go to the sewing machine and stitch it. So I'm only putting glue right in the center because I know I won't be stitching there. That way I don't have to wait before I go to the sewing machine. If you put too much glue down, you need to let it dry before you go to the sewing machine. You've been warned. All right, so I'm just going to stitch on both sides of that. So there's with it stitched. And then I thought this could go right in the middle. Just says delightful. On this one, I happen to have an artist trading card size. And then this is a rubber stamped image that I colored and stamped and cut out. This was colored with Tattered Angels. So I think that would look good on there, but it needs a little something else behind there. So we've been using the lace. Let's see what it looks like. Take a little square of it. I've also got a book page here, so I'm just kind of playing around with how this looks. I don't like the lace, so I'm still playing around with it. So I'm grabbing the Royal Peacock and a paintbrush. So what I'm going to do is paint this piece and see if that is what I needed, was just a little bit darker color behind the image. So I'm just kind of putting that together. I think I found what I needed. I've got this little bit of eyelash yarn. So what I'm going to do is glue this piece down. I'm going to cut a little piece of this eyelash trim and then kind of look at this to see how I want to put it together. I think like that. All right, so I'm going to glue this piece down. And then I'll put a lot of glue on the back of this little piece of paper. So I'm just going to glue that on there. But I'm going to let this set aside. So I'm going to put an acrylic block on top of it so it'll help squish it together. All right, so now I have this little bird image and it's so cute. All right, so we're going to glue this together, and I think this time I may want to stitch. So let's see here. I'm going to look for another piece of paper and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got another piece of paper because I want to change the color of it. So I'm just going to cut it to be a little bit of a matte to this birdie stamp. So the birdie stamp is about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go 1 3/4 inches wide. And then the stamp is right at 2 inches tall. So if I go 2 1/4 inches tall, that should give me a nice little border around that postage stamp. And I want to alter this color, so I'm going to grab my Tattered Angels again and a paintbrush, and I'm going to paint the edges. I'm going to use my heat tool to dry it. I'm going to apply some Distress inks to the edges. And then I want to glue these two pieces together. So see how it gives it a little bit of a frame? Because I plan to sew, and I wanted a little bit of a frame on here. So I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch around this frame, and I'm going to stitch around this frame, and I'll be right back. All right, so now I've got these pieces that I'm going to layer just by gluing them down. I didn't want to sew this onto the card because I wanted this to be a journal card that could be used. I didn't want the additional stitchings in the middle. All right, so I'm going to set this aside with an acrylic block on it as well. I've got this square journal card here and a little scrap, so I was trying to figure out what do I want to put on here. And then I found this little strip that was left over. So I think I've changed my mind. I want to use the bigger piece and put that on here. And then I've got Walk Your Path. But I think it needs something behind there, so why not rubber stamp it? So I've got the leafy branch here. Let's look at this. Let's see how that looks. Kind of gives it another layer of texture there. And I'm going to glue this piece down and then sew around the edge of the piece. The gel print. I couldn't get my words out. All right, let's stitch around this piece and I'll be right back. All right, I still have a square and another piece left. So I think what I want to do is make let's make a little envelope. So here's what I found. If I take this piece and I'm just going to slightly crease it where the center is. And you can also use your distress tool. So there's a little X. And now what I'm going to do is take the corners and come across and just go past it just a tad, lining it up. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side, go past it just a tad. So now these overlap just a little bit, and then I'll take this piece and I'll kind of about 1/4 of an inch fold up past that triangle. And now I've got a little envelope there. I'll go ahead and let's add some color here. So I'll cheat and open this back up and then just spritz it. So it's got a little bit of color. It's not stark white anymore. I'll go ahead and add some distress inks in here. And I think I want to stamp. I've got the small butterfly. So let's put that right there. Like that. And then since I've got the leafy branch out, I'm going to come in around the edges. And if I want, I can even come in from the bottom. So that when you close this up, you have the leaves all the way around. I may even come in from this side over here. Oh yeah, that looks good. So I'm going to put a little drop of glue, not much. I may even have too much. You don't want too much because then you'll glue your envelope shut. And then I'm going to put a little bit of glue, but don't go all the way up. And let's make a little card or something to go inside. I've got this little piece here left over. I happen to have an artist trading card, so that'll fit right inside there. So let's put some distress inks on it. What if we put that in the corner? And let's use the leafy branch again. And I know in my little bag I have some fussy cut butterflies. So what if we were to put that on there? I might take a little piece of paper. That's too much. That's what I need. It needed to be smaller. So I'm adding quite a bit of distress ink to the edges and then somewhat on top of the paper just to really alter this color. That, and then we'll have a little collage. Okay, so I have one piece left over. I'm going to save it, do something else with it later. I'm going to show you what we made today. All right, so I've got an envelope with a little journal card. I've got this little piece left over. We have a 3.5 by 3.5 inch journal card. I made what I consider as a tuck spot. So this is 1.5 inches by 5 inches. And then we've got this little journal card that could go in there. Then we've got these two journal cards that we can use. I thought this could be a tuck spot where we would put something in that way or this way, you know, if you want to glue down on two sides so you have a little tuck spot there. And then we made a belly band that will hold this journal card. So if we have a book page, let's fold it in half just so you get the idea. We could glue this down on our page, and then we have our journal card behind. If we had this pocket, we could put that down like this, maybe put that inside of it. We could do the tuck spot on one side, put a journal card behind it. So you have lots of options. You don't have to use them together even. You could split this set up and use them however you so choose. Try to get it in all the fake camera there. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing just a way to gel print, number one, and then what to do with that gel print. You know, we made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 items out of an 8.5 by 11 gel print. And I have 12 if you count the, or 11, this one was a leftover that we didn't use today, but we could find another use for it, maybe an altered paper clip or something like that. Y'all, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, do ask down below after this video is over or during the chat while we're live in the premiere. Do know I come back on Mondays at 3:45 p.m. Central Standard Time, and I show how to make journals so I can take elements like this and put it into a journal. And let's see what else. I have other video tutorials out there. You know, you go take a look, check out my blog at lindaisrael.com to see tons of tutorials. I've got almost 600 videos, I believe. So I've got a few up there. So check them out. And let's see. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to my administrative team. I greatly appreciate your help and support. Check out the Friendly Junk Journal People Facebook group, as well as the product links that I have down below and my social media connectors. Y'all, thank you so much for watching. Y'all have a fabulous day. Bye, everybody.